Hello, and welcome to the On the Couch podcast, the podcast that gives you the view from the therapist chair. I'm your host, John Dennis, a licensed professional counselor. You're listening to OTC Episode 9 with Jennifer Seletzky-Davidson of True North Wellness and the Amazing Kids Club. Hello and welcome back after the holiday break. It's good to be back again. And now it is 2019. So we're about, I want to say, a week into 2019. So I imagine at this point you all have had a chance to fall off and quit your New Year's resolutions. So congratulations. But seriously, I am really looking forward to 2019. In our family, we come up with usually, a phrase or sort of a mantra, something that we're focusing on for the year. And for 2019, that is the phrase consistent growth. And specifically applying that to the podcast, just really looking forward to what this year is going to bring. Right before the new year, the podcast cracked the 1,000 download mark, which I'm constantly saying, if you had told me, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, whatever, that I would be putting together and hosting a podcast, I would have told you were crazy. And just the idea that, in such a short amount of time, in only 3 months, we cracked 1,000 downloads is just mind-blowing to me. That there are other people out there that I don't know that are listening to this and hopefully responding positively to the information and feel like they're getting something out of it. So just a quick thank you to all of you that have listened, have downloaded, have rated or reviewed. Just thank you so much for the support. In today's episode, I had the chance to sit down and talk with Jennifer Seletzky-Davidson, who works with True North Wellness and the Amazing Kids Club, which is a program that provides socialization and counseling and just so many different services to families dealing with autism, living with autism. And this topic of Autism Spectrum Disorder, and you'll hear a lot of different terms get thrown around. Autism is a diagnosis, a disorder characterized by a group of symptoms in which people generally struggle with social skills, socialization, repetitive types of behaviors, whether that's physical or verbal tics, what they call echolalia, patterns of speech or repeating phrases or things like that. And one of the things that I loved about this conversation was just the chance to expand people's knowledge on the services that are out there and hopefully bringing more services to families that are dealing with autism and living with that. And it's unfortunately such a broad topic and often one that we don't have enough resources on. There, we kind of always say there's never enough resources, but it's growing and continuing to get information and importance of just the need for services and resources. So I'm very excited that I got the chance to talk with Jennifer. One of the main resources that she and I referenced is just the organization Autism Speaks. If you go to autismspeaks.org, you can find just a wealth of information and statistics and research and articles and getting plugged in and connected to different resources. But in terms of the statistics with autism, they actually reference a CDC study done in 2018 that explains that actually 1 in 59 children is diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. And that equates to 1 in 37 boys and 1 in 151 girls. So it's a much higher prevalence among boys, about 4 times as more likely to be diagnosed with autism rather than girls. And most children are still being diagnosed around the age of 4. One of the things that Jennifer and I talk about is just the importance of early assessment and early intervention to get services in place and start helping families and children dealing with autism. So a little bit about Jennifer and who she is. She works for True North Wellness Services and is the autism manager for True North Wellness and is the director for the Amazing Kids Club, which, as I mentioned, is a center. They actually have 2 locations in Hanover and Red Lion that provide services for families dealing with autism. And one of the things that I love about Jen is she has over 25 years of experience, both personally and professionally. She has her master's degree in counseling and is a licensed professional counselor. She completed her applied behavioral analysis for special education through Penn State. And is a board certified behavior analyst, as you'll hear her mention in the interview. And like I was saying, just the idea that she has all of that experience and the personal experience to boot, as you'll hear, just living and learning as a mother, dealing with and learning how to help her daughter who lives with autism. And that's one of the things that I really appreciated so much about talking with her is she's been there. She knows it. And it's not just something she learned in a book and something that she tells other people to do. She's done this herself and has put the time and the effort into the research and finding out what are the best practices and what works and what doesn't. And so I really want families to get that when they reach out to her, or when they bring their child or their family to Amazing Kids Club, that she knows what she's doing, and she really has a heart for these kids and these families that she's trying to help. So I really hope that you'll enjoy listening to this interview and take from it as much as I did and learning about True North Wellness and the Amazing Kids Club. All right. So Jennifer, thank you so much for being willing to do this and be on the show. I'm really looking forward to, turning people on to, True North Wellness and the Amazing Kids Club and kind of talking about what it is that you do. So yeah, can you kind of just give everybody a little bit of your background? How did you get into this? How did you get started in the role as program director? And yeah.
Okay. Well, my name is Jennifer Seletzky-Davidson, and my agency is True North Wellness Services. We do serve a greater area than just the York and Adams County that my specific program is in, but we keep hoping to expand, the services to even go further out. Our hope is to head towards the Harrisburg office area, but I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I'm also a board certified behavior analysis, which is really important in our field. And then I've been with True North Wellness for 20 years and 5 years of mental health work with IDD, adults, and children services while I was in graduate school for 3 years. So I've got 25 years experience, but in addition to that, I have 28 years experience because I have a child who is autistic, who is now 28. So combining that together is both experience and professional and personal.
Yeah, nothing like on-the-job training. So
that it does drive your kind of purpose in life. For me, anyways, it was something that kind of changed direction of where I was going, and went back to school to keep learning more. And then went back to school again to get the ABA certification. So yes, the more I worked in the field, the more she was going through different stages, made me more curious about things. And it just all blended together into life and work all came together.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I always joke, as counselors and social workers, and especially like nurses and doctors, I always say, we're all trying to save somebody. That's kind of why we got into this field and helping people. And so, yeah, especially as a mom, I can see, having that passion and that drive for, hey, I got to learn about this. I need to know what's going on.
Yeah. I remember in graduate school, the psychology classes would always say, hey, I know professors would say, hey, I know you're here to get yourself free treatment, but I'm hoping you learn something that you can help others with. And that's kind of how my direction of education went. I kept taking things that were specifically interesting to help myself
Sure.
and my family. So, yeah.
Well, yeah. Can you kind of explain for everybody what is the Amazing Kids Club? What services do you provide? What's it all about?
Okay, the Amazing Kids Club is very unique. There's really no other centers like it in Pennsylvania. We have 2 locations, Red Line, Pennsylvania, which is in our southern York area, and then our Hanover location, which is our bigger main office. It is serves Adams and York County. And these are on-site locations that serve children from 2 to 21 with autism. And we serve 3 different levels of care here. We have therapy specific to both our very high functioning autistic spectrum side of things that are used to be called Asperger's. And then we have an emerging skill, which kind of falls in between. They used to call it PDD. Now it's just known as autism generally. And then we have our more profound autistic children that need a lot more skill acquisition type things. Their social development is much slower. You're really working on just more basic skill development. And then we move them through levels of care and levels of things. And we do everything in groups with like peers. So it's a very naturalistic type of approach to therapy.
Man, that's amazing. That's like you were saying, not another center like it, which is sad. It's definitely needed all over. Yes.
It kind of came out of recognizing there was a gap in services many years ago. Wraparound, known as BHRS, a lot of people in the profession and families that have used it, I've always called it wraparound, but it's known as BHRS, and they have both home and brief, intensive and different kinds of levels of care. And that was like the only model available for treating autism through behavioral health. And this was 20 years ago when I was entering. I came to work for here. That was immediately what I went into. And I was in the houses and in the homes and in the schools and doing a lot of great work with a lot of great people and a lot of great schools. But during that 20 years ago period of time, the state was also going through changes where they had task force going on and really examining the increases of autism and best practices and, what evidence-based things should be used and really developing. I was on several different committees. I worked with a CCBHO for quality of care for treatment, which was multiple disciplines together, coming up with a big document. It was really a good growing for the field time. And through that time, reinvestment funds became available through health choices in the different counties. And we put in a proposal seeing the gap in services was really missing for social development, social and emotional development. And that's where we wrote a service description trying to present an idea. And it took over a year of back and forth developments and everything. But we came up with this model that is today's current Amazing Kids Club. It hasn't changed its service description in 14 years. We still live by it, and we just get better and better with it.
Well, yeah, it's kind of that, if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of idea. Yeah.
No. And we had to get relicensed 5 years ago in order to open the Red Line. And it withstand time, certainly fix up language and use newer terms and things like that. But our model had held, and the research had shown that children were showing more progress in social development through the Amazing Kids Club treatment process than just a BHRS model. So with that being said, we still work in conjunction with and partner with many of the BHRSs, especially for when I was telling you the 3 level of cares for your more profound autistic children that can use the skill acquisition, work one-on-one with therapists, have the school supports, and then come to us for the social piece.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I mean, definitely that old saying of, it takes a village kind of idea of, the team working together, and there's just so many pieces that are needed at the table, and kind of what you were saying of recognizing in the landscape that, like, okay, there's a large missing piece here with the social.
Yes. And I really feel for communities that don't have a place that can take care of that one really vital piece of social and emotional development. The state had put out a survey, and I think it's been a couple years, but the Bureau of Autism does some wonderful work, and they do a lot of research, and a lot of gathering data on how the state's doing on things. And they put this survey out, and I do think it was at least 3 or 4 years ago. I don't have it in front of me, but I remember they said the survey showed that the thing that was missing in the state of Pennsylvania the most from families' perspectives was that they didn't have anywhere to learn social skills. And at the same time, in this same article, they said, and that is one of the first and foremost indicators of success in later life, is how much social skills training you have. So I feel empowered by that knowledge that the community that I live in is addressing that.
Definitely. Well, and so on your side, I mean, I imagine there's just so many different ways that kids come into service, and obviously, talking about the autism spectrum of, just like we said, those 3 different levels of, severity and need and all those things. But for a child to come to the AKC, how does that process begin? What do they do? How could a parent reach out?
Well, we have an intake process here, but we also have positions at both locations. We have 3 total family liaisons who, even for a family that might not want our services but just want information, they can reach out and get resources from my family liaisons, and then they can learn the system, especially newly diagnosed as young children or first time people in the state moved over into our area, and they're like, well, what do we have here? They can call the True North Wellness and ask for the Amazing Kids Club, and they will get connected to a family liaison who will tell them all about the systems, how to get a medical access card and why you can get it. And they'll explain all these things. And then they'll go through what we do. Is that the right fit for you? Well, maybe you just need BHRS. Let me help you with that. So we do have a great system in place to help people figure out where they're at, what they need, and how to do it.
Okay. And I know, this is not binding in any legal way or anything like that. But if you have, if we have listeners that aren't in Pennsylvania, aren't in, Adams or York County, any recommendation of where should they turn? Where should they try to start this process?
I think the most important thing for everywhere we live is your counties. Your counties are going to have the funding, the resources, the case managers, the information, early intervention programs. They're going to be your first call, calling your county resource offices, calling when I was newly in this, it was the school people telling me you need to call the county, so I'm just trying to, so the information you get from your education systems, your guidance counselors, your speech therapists that you may be involved with before you even got the diagnosis. These are people that are within the systems and they can direct you. But I strongly recommend you just keep researching. Google in your area, autism services in this county, and get those resources list. Find out what they are. Make calls and say, what do you do? How old do you have to be? What is the funding? I think today is so much better for people than when I was coming up through the system with a small child. We didn't even, dating myself here, we didn't really have Google, to use, which is now like my favorite thing in the world to do. And then Autism Speaks, just remembering that if you're within this world or in this field, and just get your child as being suggested they might even have autism. Autism Speaks is as simple as that. Google that, and it has national resources. It has local stuff, and you can go in there by state, but it's just a wonderful resource. I often go in to see what else is new in there.
Okay. And I'll, for anybody listening, if you're driving or working out or anything like that, like I include detailed show notes on our website. So it'll have links to the Autism Speaks and just summary of, things you can do. All those things will be included in there. And going back to your own experience, so often, especially connected to autism spectrum, I find that the parent themselves has to become an expert. They have to sort of become their own case manager and advocate for their kid.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, a lot of times trying to piece together this very confusing web of just services and what's out there, what's not, and where do you go?
Yeah, I have conversations with families that are out of our region and can't come to the Amazing Kids Club, but will hear about me and the family liaison. We say, you should talk to Jennifer. She knows more about that. And I talk to families from Maryland that can't come. And I have lots and lots of families that actually move from Maryland right over the line from the Gettysburg all the way down to the southern part. That's where I think some of our numbers are higher than some of our other counties because we're a borderline area.
Okay.
And Maryland does not have the same unique setup that Pennsylvania does with providing all children in the state with medical access, which that medical access pays for your behavioral health and your speech therapies and things. It's just a wonderful system. We're very fortunate. I myself am a Maryland transplant, came over when my daughter was 5 and
Me as well.
I do know this, that what was being offered to me through early intervention was fine, but after that was very limited, and it was all through the school. So yeah, I have family members down in Maryland now. I have nephew on the spectrum, and my brother used to say, "Can you just sneak him in?" Well, unfortunately, that's illegal.
Nope.
But
can't do that.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. That's why I say again how fortunate I feel for the York and Adams counties residents to have a social development program here for their needs.
Okay, so let's jump to they've come to you. What are some things you try to focus on? Are there certain techniques or things that you could pass on to parents that would help either in their home setting or, just things that you try to focus on for the kids?
Well, we use many specific therapies, but the best practices, the evidence-based ones for sure that are the foundation of our program are applied behavior analysis techniques. And that's a lot of your positive reinforcements, your modeling, prompting, extinction techniques, redirecting, scripting, those kind of things. But then we also do a lot of another evidence-based one is cognitive behavior, which is techniques that are very, very successful with the higher functioning clients. And they use a lot of things with visual strategies, things from the Carol Gray social stories. As everybody hears that name, look up some of Carol Gray's things. She's huge in the field for visuals and scripting and social narratives. All of that's included in different ways. We are a group model, so sometimes you have to make an individual script for one child, or you make scripts for the whole group to follow. So it's working in group model can be both you're addressing an individual's needs and a group's needs at the same time. So you're bringing a lot of different things into the picture. Let's see, what else do we do? We do not just do behavioral. I know there was a lot of kickback, and there is, and it's still the most research-based program for working with autism and most successful outcomes. But we do blend it with multiple things like play therapies, floor time, the DRI, Greenspan floor time methods. We do emotive therapies. We have like a specific one that people don't know about called kimochis. It's a Japanese name that means feelings. And it's a complete packaged curriculum designed, and they have a website. They're always updating it. And when you're a member, you get all the new stuff. You get new characters. You get, it's really a really cool program. We do that with the younger children. All kinds of stuff like that. So we combine your cognitive behaviorals with your emotives. We do the ABA principles are kind of the underlying foundation that everybody is taught and learned, and we monitor behaviors and change of behaviors through those methods. Very mixed, but the big thing about the center, the unique thing about the Amazing Kids Club are two different things. We have a full center, and we don't believe in shying away from the difficulties of autism. So children autistic have some degrees of sensory overload, sensory issues. They have transition issues. They're very rigid in many things. They need very, very, very structured types of things. So we provide an overall structure, but at the same time, we call some tough situations and chaos, and then make them learn coping skills to work through it. So a 3-hour evening session after school would involve moving to multiple rooms for different activities, going to the gross motor room to do gym-like activities, exercise, yoga, those kind of things. Then go to the sensory room for some sensory integration activities. Then go to the art room. But each of these creates a transition. Each of these creates you have to stop, and no, you can't take that with you, and no, you have to learn to accept no. And so the very environment is therapy in itself.
Sure, and that's such an important topic and an issue. I mean, for those that aren't aware, I mean, I imagine a lot of families are extremely aware of transitioning from preferred to non-preferred tasks, and all the struggles that can come with that. And so often, what I saw and still see, and I imagine you would echo this as well, is a lot of families just learn to avoid. They learn to walk around the minefields, and not push back.
Right. They don't go out as much. They don't go to the movies because the child will start screaming, and they don't shop the same. Their lives are much more limited. And that is where I get the biggest satisfaction. And my team of therapists hear the best news is when we actually take the kids to the movies. We take them to the malls. We take them to the restaurants. And I get some of the most coolest letters from families saying, I just had to sit down and tell you about my night at the pizza place last night. And they say, this is the first time, he's 11 years old, my family has been able to go out to dinner on a Friday night. These kind of things, and that's the generalization of learning those coping skills here in a structured environment and a safe environment, and then putting them on the vans or putting them on the bus and taking them to that restaurant, and then keeping the families informed. This is where we went. This is where we're going to go every Thursday. And then they can go there, and that's creating, that generalization, that carryover that infects them more than anything. It not only improves the quality of the child's life and
the family.
Yes. And that's where we're most proud, that when we hear those success stories and the parents coming in visit after visit, because you have to go through all the same things. You have to do your reauthorizations, and you have to come in for regular treatment updates and things like that, because everybody has an individual treatment plan. But when they come in and they hear about what's happening here, and then they say, well, we also saw this at home, and that must be because you did that, or how about you guys try it? And then we give that give and take information. It's just a wonderful thing.
Sure. And so are there any specific, I know obviously with confidentiality, you have to be sensitive to that, but any specific memories that stand out in terms of, positive impacts or success stories? I think so often we need to hear those things. A lot of times, especially as counselors and social workers, we get a lot more of the negative. So
we had a teenager 2 years ago graduate from the program at 19, I think, and he was going to go to HAC. So that was success in itself.
Which, for those outside the area, that's the local community college. Yep.
Yes. And he wrote an open letter and sent it by email to his therapist for like 7-8 years. And he chronologically talked about when he first came to the Amazing Kids Club, and how he could barely talk. He couldn't look at people. And he went through this most beautiful, none of us can read it without starting to cry. So when I was doing United Way, we're a United Way agency, and I would go out and do talks for us. I used to read his letter, and that was, I just stop and I say, and I think he's captured everything I have to say. Thank you. It was just, but he talked about that how through working with a kid, he finally had a friend, a real friend, and what that meant, and he didn't even know what that meant until he came here, and it was really touching. And but we heard about, for all of us, just were so touched because we found out what we were doing, what it meant from the perception of what he saw, and how important our work is.
Oh, definitely. And I going back to selfishly as the therapist, I mean, it makes the, getting bit or, getting screamed at or things like that all the more worth it. Not that it's not without it, but especially when you have those success stories, that's what keeps you going. I think.
We often say we know when there's new clients just starting, because it's a little more screaming going on than normal, and you hear in the preschool, you hear a screamer, and we say, oh, we got a new one here, because then that quiets down, but then you hear the radios going off in the afternoon or evening programs. Someone's trying to elope from one of the classrooms. Oh, got a new one. He's not used to the routine yet. Yep. It's just like the things the way we look at things are much more calmer than people that aren't specialized and understand the full range of autism.
You're listening to OTC Episode 9 with Jennifer Seletzky-Davidson of True North Wellness. We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor.
Life is hard, but Parenting and Family Solutions is here to help. Our board-certified counselors are easy to talk to and offer a safe, encouraging environment to help you with your unique needs. We specialize in helping clients of all ages deal with depression, anxiety, marriage issues, screen addiction, and ADHD, just to name a few. We now have daytime and evening appointments available in Harrisburg and Lancaster and accept most major insurance plans. Visit our website to learn more at www.parentfamilysolutions.com or give us a call at 717-602-5560. Let us help you build a stronger family and a healthier you.
So on the parent end of things, are there things, if you were speaking to every parent out there, what do you wish they knew about either AKC or, getting their kids services?
Well, I did touch upon it before when I talked about that survey that Bureau of Autism point out, because they had attached that research that said that social development, social emotion development is one of the most prioritized things that we must as parents realize. So when you're sitting there and you have a 12, 13-year-old and the school's doing a great job and they've really grown in their language, they've really grown in their comprehension, and they're doing better academically, but they don't have a single friend. They're not being invited. They tried the Boy Scouts but couldn't do it. All those types of things. That's when you really have to get serious and say, okay, he's doing well here, but he's not joining the world socially. And that is where I learned. That's where I hit with my own daughter at 12, 13. We had all the kinks and all the things in place in the IEPs, and we had all the extras going on, but she didn't have a single friend. The phone never rang. She wasn't invited to the birthday parties. It's just all through elementary school, she was very isolated.
And that's so hard as a parent.
It is. And you always have that one parent that sends everyone in the classroom the invitation, and you take your child there. But all the other parents leave the child off, but you have to stay, and you have to hold your child's hand because it's going to be overwhelming for them, and they're going to be overstimulated, and they don't know.
You may have to exit quickly or,
Correct. We're always different. But we're so happy to get the invitation, but then it's a dismal failure. It's like you got what you wish. Oh, look, these nice people they included.
But it brings a whole set of problems.
Yes. So social development. And, I found when I was working in the families, with the families as a BHRS, mobile and behavioral specialist, that when I would go into those homes over and over again, and I get to know the families and I get to know the child, I remember when I was starting to see that the gap in the social part, we weren't doing social skill groups. We weren't doing, because you couldn't do social skill training just an adult, me with a child. I was only teaching them to respond to an adult. I wasn't teaching them to be a child to a child. So when I was going through that, I was out sick for a while, and I went back to my family the one day, and the mother greeted me at the door, and she was like almost mad at me. She's like, I'm glad you're here finally, but he's really mad. I'm not sure he's going to talk to you because you're his best friend, and he's been mad that you haven't been coming to see him. And in that moment, I thought to myself, at home, I'm my daughter's best friend. I'm in this families with these children. I'm their best friend because they don't have peers. And it hit me like a light bulb that I shouldn't be this child's best friend. I shouldn't be his only friend. I remember that moment like it was yesterday. And I remember sitting at home with my daughter looking at her, that her family was her only social interaction. And we tolerated things instead of making her do better at talking to others. We knew her difficulties, so we just let it slide. So we weren't doing her any favors by just accepting that. So that's where this all comes from. And that's what I say to families. Be aware that the social development, we as families can't do it by ourselves. We do need social skill programs, and there are a variety of different ways to do it. And even if you didn't think they could do the Boy Scouts, going to the Boy Scouts, going to the church youth groups, going to those different kinds of things, and helping them through that and trying to get them to be with other children, and then backing yourself out as things start getting better. Anything at all, even if you don't have the amazing kids club to help,
Well, and I think a lot of times I try to change that perspective a little bit. I mean, I definitely get that there's a lot that goes into trying to get to that birthday party and being at that birthday party or the Boy Scouts, and the change in that mindset of even if it doesn't go well, that doesn't mean it's a failure.
Right. It's a step. and then seeking help, So in an area like ours, we didn't have this 13, 14 years ago. We didn't have social skill groups. So a bunch of us therapists got together and started doing it. What's to say that you don't contact your schools and find out other children that might want to all come into the bowling alley on and a couple, start your own create. Unfortunately, and many times that's where it starts. And
I always say as a therapist, one of the sad jokes is there's always a need for another group or more groups, more activities like that.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
Well, and on the 21 and up, and I don't know, are you able to speak to any advice of, okay, you have a kid that they're older than that, or they're going, obviously they're going to age out at some point. Any advice for how to connect to services there?
Well, this is the new gap in our services, and it's been that way for a while. And I have continued to see more and more children come through here and graduate out to different types of things that aren't really geared for autism. I think right now in my area, we the families and parents are different. We try to find our own way, so we don't have a lot of support. Not structured programs like there isn't an adult amazing kids club. But one of the things that I can tell you, just a resource that I do know of, Focus Behavioral Health is an agency that does the autism waiver work in the counties in this area, and I know they serve. So I will say that can be Googled, Focus Behavioral Health. That is.
And sorry to interrupt, but in terms of the waiver, I do want to try to spell that out for families. Are you able to speak to that a little bit in terms of what you're talking about with the waiver?
Yes. Now, my daughter was on by the time she went through all the schools and everything, she was on the higher end. So we did put her on the wait list, but she never came up to get one. I think the more intensive cases, more higher need children were getting the ones as they came available.
Now you're saying that's the ID and DD waiver, the intellectual disability or developmental?
That's one type, but there is a specific autism waiver. And it's through the Bureau of Autism Services. To get information, just look up the Bureau of Autism Services, BAS, and they have applications, but they only have so many available in the whole state. So there's thousands and thousands of kids that have come up since my daughter turned 18 and through the system, and she's 28, that never really got the waiver. And the reason autistic services that gets funded through this waiver program, that with a funding source, aren't in business or can't open a business and run it because there's so few individuals that have the waiver. You can't really start a program easily. So Focus Behavioral Health, I do know, I've talked to them. I've talked to the founder, and he has caseloads in order to make a caseload that could be 7 counties. It's just kind of hard. It's very hard to describe how I can't tomorrow start a program for adults with autism and get paid. My funding source be the waiver, because right here in York and Adams County, there's not enough individuals holding that waiver to make the program. So then there is the IDD, the intellectual developmental disorder side of things. So you can have autism and have IDD, and you can get a waiver and funding sources through that branch of funding, and they do have a variety of things there. And that's that. If you're putting your child name on the waiver list for autism and they have IDD, you might not want to wait. You might want to go and talk to caseworkers and people and find out more about the IDD side of things.
Sure. And yeah, you and I had talked about, the state of the waiver, the limited number of spaces and things like that. But I still recommend, go anyway, go through the process, get on the list. I understand that can be frustrating, but if you don't, you won't.
And I learned a lesson. You need to check in on that. I had my daughter's name on it. I just thought, well, we'll receive a letter in the mail when she becomes eligible, or a phone call or something. And I found out years later that they dropped names off the lists that didn't come into service over so many years. So I don't know what all those standards are. I know we weren't seeking immediate intensive care services because she was stable at home with her family. So there's different levels of care. So the more higher need you have, or it's a family that needs their child to move out of the home, these are where you may be able to get quicker services. So you have to call your caseworkers.
Check back in.
This is the same thing we were saying earlier about case managers are critical. And they have adult case management too. So to help you through those systems and resources and how you do things.
Okay. Man, well, thank you so much for just the amazing service that you guys provide. I was really looking forward to getting to speak to you because, yeah, like we've said, it's such a gap need. So are there particular projects that you're going to be working on as we wind down 2018, 2019? Yeah, I imagine it's not like, nope, no projects. Yeah, there's always something.
There is always something. We just opened a brand new location, which was really the last 2 years' work of my, the focus of my work was opening a new, larger center, fully self-sufficient over here on Westminster Avenue in the Hanover area. And we've brought new clients in right and left. We're in the 300 children in this area. So
let me interrupt you there. Sorry, but in terms of that Hanover location, let's say you have somebody from Maryland, from Virginia, or whatever, and maybe they just want to come and tour the facility, kind of get an idea of what it is, and then try to go back home and duplicate that. Are they able to do that?
Sure. I actually was working with an organization down in Carroll County, Maryland, that was trying to figure it out, and they couldn't figure out the funding. And when I explained Pennsylvania is different, they went back down to Carroll County to figure out, well, what could they get for funding to start a smaller but similar type of idea. From last I heard, they hadn't been able to get that off the ground. See, the funding is everything. But the new projects that we are looking at are, we are going to start something for the adults. We're getting ready. We've been putting together a survey that we're going to give to the case managers to send to all the clients on their caseloads to ask what kind of services they're looking for once they've come out of once you're 21, you're no longer eligible for the medical assistance under children and adolescents. So we're targeting 18 and above, and the survey will ask them day hours, evening hours, do you have transportation, recreational type programs you're interested in? And then once we get that information over the winter, we would like to start something this spring, and our thoughts are more of a social drop-in type of group. Open to 18 to 25, and then 25 to 35, kind of things that will feature like we do now. You're with your same age functioning level peers. So that, and we're really looking to go to restaurant, pretty much an adult amazing kids type model where we're going to do a lot of community based bowling and go to plays and do things.
Social interaction.
Yes. Yeah. And our focus would be social interaction, to give them the outlets they fell right off the cliff when they left the Amazing Kids Club. So the other thing we're working on is actually the BHRS model is like two separate departments here in our agency currently, but we want to combine a brief therapist model out of the Amazing Kids Club. So we have a family here that has other needs, that we actually have a therapist that works for us here, specializes in autism, that can also go to the home and help with those transitional if they're going through a difficult time, they need extra training, generalizing the skills that we teach here, there, stabilizing things. So we've been working on getting all the ducks in a row to start a brief therapist model out of the Amazing Kids Club. So there are two current projects.
Yeah, that's very exciting. I'll definitely be interested to see how those go in the next year. So where can people find True North Wellness on the internet? Where do they find Amazing Kids Club? Yeah.
True North Wellness is a full community agency. We do have all outpatients, DNA, school-based services. I didn't know if I remember saying all that before. Make sure that they know I'm not just autism. They have crisis interventions. But everything, we have a nice website, and it's truenorthwellness.org. Even our listeners without a pen, if they just remember truenorthwellness.org, all the numbers, names of directors, everybody you contacts, family liaisons, all that is on that website under the different departments. I think that's easier for listeners to just know where they can seek all the numbers and everything.
Yep. Yeah. And like I said, I'll include that in the show notes, and there will be a direct link to the True North Wellness website. So it'll be easy for people to check out. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me and hopefully just educate families out there about the Amazing Kids Club and the service that you're providing, and hopefully for those that are outside of the Adams and York County, they're getting ideas and resources for how to duplicate this and fill that need in other places. So yeah, just thank you so much.
If anyone has any questions, they can always find me at the Amazing Kids Club. Like I said,
you're always there.
Almost. It's definitely second home. But my numbers and contact information is on the website.
Okay. All right. Well, I look forward to hearing more from you, and looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with in the next year. So again, thanks.
Thank you very much.
So again, just so amazing the work that True North Wellness is doing at the Amazing Kids Club, and I hope you were able to get that from Jennifer, and just the passion and the knowledge that she has for working with these families. Just to kind of recap, that topic of early intervention, early identification, and reaching out to early intervention, the service, as well as just any county assistance programs to try to get connected and start that journey of getting things identified and getting services put in place is just so crucial. So I would encourage any of you. I know that's so scary for a lot of families, and we really struggle with, I don't want my kid to be labeled, and I don't want my kid to be treated any differently. But a lot of times just even asking some of those questions and getting an assessment done can bring a lot of clarity to a situation. And one of the other topics that I wanted to go over was, in the interview, we talk a lot about pushing socialization and social skills and not avoiding situations and learning how to not walk around those minefields. And for any of you that were listening, and maybe you were really connecting with that, and that maybe that really struck a chord with you, I do want to stress, no, nobody fully knows what it is you're going through. Nobody else has walked in your shoes or lived it. And there are good days and bad days. There are days when you just don't have it in you to fight that battle. And it's much easier to just let them do whatever it is to avoid those triggers. And, I don't want you to feel judged or feel guilty or feel pressured that you're not doing enough as a parent, because you're not, pushing those socialization skills all the time, all day, every day kind of thing. It is hard, and it changes minute to minute, second to second. So I really want to make sure that you hear that. And if you have any questions, if you have concerns, reach out to Jennifer. I'll include her contact info in the show notes, and I would definitely encourage you to just reach out to her if you have questions on your child and what's appropriate, or if you have questions on how to start your own, program similar to Amazing Kids Club. She is a wealth of knowledge and is more than willing to share of that knowledge and of her time. So thank you, as always, for tuning in, and I will catch you guys next episode. Next episode will be OTC episode 10, where I get to sit down and have a conversation with a personal mentor and hero, Joe Sanok, who is the host of the Practice podcast. If you liked what you've heard on the podcast, please be sure to subscribe and review wherever you're catching this podcast at. You can check out any links and resources on our detailed show notes or other episodes that have been archived at www.parentfamilysolutions.com/podcast. If you want to catch up on what Parenting and Family Solutions is doing, be sure to follow us on any of your favorite social media apps. This is your host, John Dennis, saying good night. The author and host of this podcast is not engaged in a therapeutic relationship with the listener and cannot give counseling advice without a confidential appointment. Listeners should be sure to consult with a licensed therapist in their area or seek emergency medical attention if they are experiencing psychological difficulty. A special thanks to the Topsy-Turvies for the show theme song. Their song, Like a Living Dead, can be found at topsyturvies.bandcamp.com. The bump interview track was the song 1973 by Bruno E. The author and host of this podcast is John Dennis. Special thanks to producer and editor Trevor Groff.